I'm back on the trail in search of more Old West history. Today I'll be going through portions of Southern California, actually picking up where I last left off, and starting here in Temecula, California. I'll be looking for old stagecoach stops and other signs of the Old West that still remain today. I'm walking down a preserved portion of the Butterfield Stagecoach Trail, which roughly followed the Southern Immigrant Trail and was active from 1858 until 1861. Now this preserved section is actually at Vail headquarters in Temecula, California, which is where I'm going to be starting my journey today. There's a lot of awesome Western history here in Temecula and all the areas that we're going to explore. The oldest building in Temecula is the circa 1867 Louis Wolfe store, which we see here. Now this adobe structure is really awesome. Today it's actually been turned into a coffee shop. And although it was not standing when the Butterfield Stage Line came through Temecula, it did actually serve as a stagecoach stop later in years. And here we see a sign that actually talks about the Butterfield stagecoaches, how they followed roughly the Southern Immigrant Trail. Of course, came into Temecula between September 1858 to March 1861. And there was an adobe store run by a man named John McGee that was just south of Temecula Creek. That building no longer stands, but that was the stagecoach stop during those years when the Butterfield Stage Line came through Temecula. This tablet goes on to say, the stagecoaches carried passengers and mail on journeys lasting 22 days between Missouri and San Francisco. They came from the east by way of Warner's Ranch, Oak Grove, and Ahwaanga. From the north, they traveled through Lake Elsinore and Marietta. To give you a kind of idea where the original Temecula stagecoach stop was for the Butterfield Stage Line. This is the basin and sort of what is still known as Temecula Creek, and we are looking south. So John McGee's store, which was the Butterfield stagecoach stop here in Temecula, would have been generally in this area just on the south side of the creek. So not much left of the creek today, nothing left of John McGee's store, but just kind of wanted to give you all an idea of where that stagecoach line would have stopped here in Temecula at the time. Now if I look over this way, this is actually Vail headquarters where the Wolfe store is and where the original stretch of Butterfield stagecoach line actually still is. So not far from it, you can kind of get a visual there as the path, the trail came down this way and would have been forded by wagons and horses here at Temecula Creek. And then again, that was the southerly route, and then right behind me would have been going north. All right, now we're gonna leave a little bit of the, I guess, more populated areas such as Temecula and go find some of the more off the beaten path sites associated with, again, the Old West and the Butterfield Stage Line. So let's get moving. I am now in Lake Elsinore, California. And here I'm visiting the next stagecoach stop from the Butterfield Stage Line, which was once known as the Machado Adobe. Unfortunately, this adobe, which was built around 1835, actually burned down in September of 2017. So the structure itself, while it was here for over 150 years, no longer stands. But we're going to come here to check out the former site of that structure and see if there's anything left to check out. I am now standing on the former site of the stagecoach stop here in Lake Elsinore. And right off the bat, I can see some, looks like old brick portions and probably part of the foundation for the building. Again, this burned down about 7 years ago now, unfortunately. And while the structure's not here, there are definitely remnants that you can see still here. And actually, wow, here you go. You can see some of the burned out wood, just some evidence of the fire that took place here, and unfortunately burned down that old adobe structure, which again was the actual stagecoach station. But lots of brick and portions of the building. And again, I think some of this is actually part of the, original foundation for the building itself. And you can get a better idea of it over here on this side too. And this goes back a ways. So I'm not sure if there was multiple buildings here on site. It's certainly possible. But back here we see some more evidence of the former stagecoach site. What that is. Big piece of metal of some sort. And more of that foundation. It's really sad. It's unfortunate that this building burned down because it really was a really beautiful architectural example of that, early 1800s adobe structures. And again, just held so much history, not just here for the town of Lake Elsinore, but also for Southern California and the Butterfield Stage Line. Man, as I'm walking back, there really are so many parts to this as far as ruins go. And here we see even more just brick and foundation. So I'll go ahead and show you guys kind of the backdrop here. It really is absolutely beautiful. And the Butterfield Stage Line itself kind of ran along the road here, which today is Grande Avenue. So it made sense that the stagecoach stop would have been where I'm standing now. And you can't see it here on camera, but just beyond the tree line is Lake Elsinore itself. But really a beautiful area. And again, unfortunate that this building's no longer here, but it is kind of neat to be able to walk the former site and just see some of those ruins and some of the things that are still kind of laying around. From this angle, you can actually get a better idea of, again, what I believe was the foundation of the Machado Adobe, the stagecoach stop. And you can still see some of the old piping. Not sure, what of this over the years was retrofitted. And yeah, it's really pretty color, this red. But assuming this was the foundation, then the structure itself would have stood, or at least partially stood, right here. Now this here is a pretty cool piece. You can tell this is really old. It's amazing just to be standing out here and to actually hold this in my hands and realize that this was formed and laid by somebody well over 170 years ago. I'm sure after the fire they ended up taking down the remnants of the walls and other parts, but really most of it's just been left out here in the field. And as you can see, while there are some homes and stuff around, it really kind of is in the middle of this field. Nothing's been done with it, so I'm not sure if there's any plans that the town of Lake Elsinore has moving forward. But as of today, right now in 2024, the remnants and what is left of the former Butterfield Stagecoach stop is sitting here in this field. All right, though the original Stagecoach stop here in Lake Elsinore no longer stands, it is pretty neat to visit this site. But now I'm actually going to head a little bit further down the road, down the path that the Butterfield Stage Line would have followed, because some of my research showed that there are some portions of the original Stagecoach trail that still exist here near Lake Elsinore. So we're going to go a little bit further down the road and explore and see if we can find it. Okay, I'm just up the road here in Lake Elsinore, kind of by the forced route 6S06 off of Grande Avenue. And some of my research showed that there may be some original portions of the Stagecoach trail back here. I have no idea if that's true, and hopefully I'm not on private property right now, but I figured I would take just a little bit of time to explore back here to see if I can find anything of interest. Well, I suppose that this certainly could be a portion of that original Stage Line route. Obviously today a lot of people take maybe their bikes, dirt bikes, whatever back here. But this may be a portion. I'm actually going to launch my drone to see if I can get a better view or a better idea of what's here in the area. Unfortunately, there's no way to know exactly, at least with the research that I've done so far. But hopefully one day I'll be able to kind of nail down which portions are actually original. With that being said, some of those are a little more inaccessible than I thought, so I am glad I had the drone to be able to at least get some footage of it. But it is cool to think and just picture this landscape, Stagecoach stops kind of going up and down some of these steep grades on these hills, and just generally having a lot of the same views of the mountains that we have here today. That part is pretty awesome. All right, I'm just up the I-15 from Lake Elsinore in an area known as Temescal Valley. And here, actually just off the highway, actually across the street from a Shell gas station, are some historical markers I wanted to stop and point out. This one here on the left is about the Serrano tanning vats. Nearby, 2 vats were built in 1819 by the Luiseno Indians under the direction of Leandro Serrano, first non-Indian settler in what is now Riverside County. The vats were used in making leather from cowhides, which is pretty interesting. I've never actually heard of tanning vats. And here in the middle is actually another marker. This one is considerably older, and it's actually damaged here on the side, but it reads tanning vat, built in 1819 by Leonardo Serrano, so a slightly different spelling of the first name. And there's actually a marker here at the bottom. Marker made by the Boy Scouts in 1962, salvaged by Billy Holcomb in 1981. And there is one more marker off here on the right. And this marker reads, site of 3rd Serrano adobe. Nearby, an adobe house was built about 1867. It was occupied until 1898 by Leandro Serrano's widow. Under Spanish law, she owned the surrounding 20,000-acre rancho, Temescal, but her ownership was denied by the U.S. Supreme Court. And that is actually one of those very unfortunate parts of history out here where you had a lot of this land changing hands throughout the 1800s, from the Spanish to the United States, and of course a lot of things that may have been recognized by Spanish law weren't always upheld, and it seems like more often than not, were not recognized or upheld by the U.S. government. And unfortunately, for Mr. Serrano's widow, that's exactly what happened to her. But I can't even imagine. 20,000 acres is an insane amount of land. And back here, is, I presume, one of the tanning vats from the early 1800s, which they used to tan cowhide. And this over here is actually the second tanning vat. So there are two of these tanning vats here on site. Again, it's kind of interesting to see this much history just right off the side of the highway, across the street from a gas station. It really makes you wonder, all those people driving by, if any of them are actually curious when they see these markers, or curious what any of this actually is for. All right, now I'm a little bit further off trail. When I was looking at Google Maps in this area, I actually saw a marker for an Indian pictograph on a rock. So basically ancient artwork and words etched into a rock by Native Americans long ago. So I'm going down this random trail. I think it's a trail, but the views are really pretty. And I actually noticed down here, I kind of heard the water running. This beautiful creek. And it is really peaceful back here. Like I said, I don't know if this is actually a trail or not, or maybe it's just been made one over the years. But I'm gonna head back here and see if I can find the Indian pictographs. Man, this was not easy to get to. But this is most certainly what I came to look for. It actually has a barbed wire fence around it. And one thing I did read up on is that this has been vandalized over the years, which I assume is why they have this barbed wire fence. So it's walking around this, trying not to slip, because if I have to catch my hand on anything, I certainly don't want to grab onto that barbed wire. This is pretty neat, but not exactly sure exactly what I'm looking for or looking at. Trying to see if there's any etchings in the stone that are not natural. Here on this side, you can definitely see some etchings here in the stone. They may not be coming out too well on camera, and unfortunately I can't get any closer, but it's wild to think that somebody here on this rock made these etchings and these carvings, potentially hundreds of years ago. That is really wild, and it just kind of opens up more of that Old West history here in North America. As much as I love learning about the pioneers and those who came west, I'm also fascinated by learning of the experiences of those that were already here as well, and how all that came together, particularly in the 1700s and 1800s, just makes for some incredible history that's definitely worth studying. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and leave the Indian pictograph rock and press on to some more Old West history. And then we're gonna finally finish up with one last Stagecoach stop. That's if I don't get lost or stuck back here in the brush first. Oh boy. One thing I did want to point out as I'm driving down the road, I'm actually heading down Temescal Canyon Road, and this follows the original route of the Butterfield Stage Line. And they actually have this really awesome sign just on the side of the road, so we are on the right trail, I promise you. All right, I'm going to finish up my journey here at perhaps a odd location, but it's at a park. It's just on the southern side of Corona, California. And this was another Butterfield Stagecoach stop. And here is all that's left of the Butterfield Stagecoach stop that was here on the north side of Temescal Valley in modern-day Corona. And there's this stone with the plaque. It says, "The site of Butterfield Stage Station, where mail was delivered, horses changed, and passengers given rest and a meal. First stage carrying overland mail left Tipton, Missouri on September 15th, 1858, and passing through Temescal, arrived in Los Angeles on October 7th, 1858. First dedicated by the History and Landmark Committee, Corona Women's Improvement Club on May 24th, 1934, at the site of the stage station along Temescal Canyon Road, and rededicated October 7th, 2006 by the Corona Women's Improvement Club." And as mentioned, this is all that's left. Everything around here has been really well built up, but I know through studies and research they have determined that this was the site of the stagecoach station. Of course, we've been driving down Temescal Canyon Road which follows along the original Butterfield stage route. And man, talk about being in California. It's a beautiful lemon tree. Smells amazing. And not sure if it would have smelled this nice when you're dealing with all the horses changing out and all the passengers that probably hadn't bathed or showered in days, if not weeks. But today, this site, as mentioned, is a beautiful park. All right, now that is the last Butterfield Stagecoach station we're going to be stopping by on this adventure. It's been really interesting. This one, compared to the last journey, you know, going up the highway, a lot more built up, you know, a lot more cars, a lot more people. But it is kind of cool to see the remnants and what's left of some of these stagecoach stops, even if it is just a historical marker. And, you know, to kind of drive up this way, a path that people take every day, to think that there were, you know, every 15 or 20 miles or so, a stagecoach stop, and going down Temescal Canyon Road and realizing that was the original path of the Butterfield Stage Line. It's really interesting, and I'm glad that they have signs up to remind people of the history that really is all around us. But that's going to be it for this one. Now it's on to the next journey.